Hi, everybody. I'm Paul with Kim and Steve. We're talking today about the frontiers of a lot of things, including technology and its effect and impact on death. And I asked what I thought was kind of a silly question, but I don't think it's actually all that silly. Do you think that we'll be able to, that the technology will interfere with death? And in some ways, it already has with the extensive last minute urgent efforts at life saving keep the body alive for a far longer time than consciousness exists. Potentially exist within the body, heroic so-called
Right,
so-called heroic measures.
right.
Um, but I wonder, if it's possible to speculate whether or not will be able to translate the energies of being that occur in a dead person versus live living humanity, and actually communicate with them through technology at some point. In other words, if the assumption is that disembodied souls are operating at a higher frequency of the electromagnetic energetic spectrum, we ought to be able to build ways to contact them through,
Right. To tap into that energy.
right, in the same way that we can tap into the energy of radio waves, for instance, or television
Hmm.
Hmm.
waves, or I mean, is 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 it possible that our disembodied souls are on the electromagnetic spectrum at some place we haven't discovered yet?
Hmm. Yeah, it's got interesting implications. It reminds me of um, people have envisioned this already. So, do you remember that episode? There was an episode of Fringe. Do you watch Fringe? Are you familiar with the show Fringe?
Oh, I'm not.
You're not?
No.
Um, so, there's a lot of advances in technology in this movie. Sort of, how would you characterize it?
In this series, it's kind of science fiction.
Not
Yeah.
movie, yeah, series.
So what was the one you're talking about? Bring people in.
So, it's a female FBI agent, and she loses her partner, and so he dies. It's not lost somewhere, but he dies, and they needed to get some answers from him. So, this mega corporation called Global Dynamics had this cutting edge technology, had this way to communicate with him even though he was dead already, and to get some of these answers. So I don't remember the specifics of like the science of how they did it, but it is something that has been envisioned already and, you know, brought into the consciousness of the world, really, through this particular medium.
Well, it's a human nightmare from the point of view of the dead person. It's like you die and you finally get away, and the office calls you and says, "No, wait a second, you're not done yet.
You got to
We
come
have to
in
talk to you
today.
about this and this."
Hey, I thought I was on a permanent vacation. What's going
Right,
on?
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We
But
made
then,
it dead, but you got to put in your hours.
that's
Uh-huh.
right.
And you don't get a choice. We're bringing you back no matter what.
But then on the flip side of that, if there's something that still needs to be said, then there's that opportunity to share that.
Hmm.
It seems to me the more difficult portion would actually be not necessarily contacting the energies, but um, communicating with them. How
Hmm.
would you communicate with the energies in a different portion of the magnetic spectrum that would come in
Yeah,
by a totally different way?
right. Well, I think, hooking it up to some kind of algorithm,
Mm.
some kind of,
Hooking the body up.
yeah, hooking, because it's energy, it's electromagnetic energy, right, in the body. So if it's still connected somehow to some kind of consciousness, and some spiritual systems believe that consciousness doesn't leave the body until so many, days after death.
Hmm.
So if it's still there and it's accessible through this current of energy, electrical energy, that can then be hooked up to a computer, and if there's an algorithm that then can read that energy and make some kind of sense out of it,
Yeah, I
that'd
mean,
make a great app for an iPhone.
make a great what?
Make a great app for an iPhone. New meaning to talking to the dead, right?
Apparin?
App. You know,
apps, yeah.
app.
Application, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was thinking you didn't even need the body there to be able to communicate with the formerly. So I was formerly David Duchovny on whatchamacallit, and I'm dead now, and you don't even have to have the body there. You just contact their energy and say, you send in a message to the afterlife saying, do you know David Duchovny? If you do, can you tell me we want to talk to him?
Where can I find him?
Oh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody 6 degrees of separation. You may add a couple degrees of separation in death, but
Right.
still got it. Everybody's got to know everybody at some point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. But I also think that hooking, sort of a more, I guess, what I would think as more practical, realistic, or maybe an immediate application of this is to actually have the electrical energy from the body to be able to do it that way versus, it's like, how would you plug into that consciousness stream?
In the higher frequency?
The higher
energy?
frequency,
Yeah.
yeah. So one way would just seem a little bit easier to access than another because, how many frequencies would you have to go through to try to actually find that versus, just
Plugging in directly.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a socket right under your left arm. I think that
Yeah, right.
That's right.
Got a nice little port
flap
here.
there, yeah.
chips are
Yeah,
actually
we both
for.
Yeah.
Chips are so that the government can keep tabs of us after we're gone.
Uh-huh.
Right.
They're not anything funny in the afterlife, like advising that the revolution be started sooner rather than later when we're in the afterlife.
Right, or maybe sneaking off to the Akashic Records and rewriting some history, right?
That was true. Forging the Akashic Records, yeah.
That's right. History is not for the winners; it's for those who get to the Akashic Record first.
That's right. With a little whiteout.
I think it's true that. I like your approach, Kim. I think finding an algorithm, so called, might be a little tricky, but I think it's definitely a possibility to. If we can de-encrypt stuff that's being written now on the computer systems, we can de-encrypt the human algorithm somehow.
Yeah.
It's like figuring out what the brainwaves say. We're probably not too far from that. We're probably 100 years from that.
Mm-hmm.
From being able to use some kind of external equipment to assess what a brainwave is actually, what the brainwave is saying by the measurement of the brainwave, what the thought is.
Mm-hmm.
So you put in a hat over somebody, one of these algorithm hats. You watch as the thoughts scroll across the screen in front of you.
And you read their thoughts.
And you read their thoughts, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it has some very interesting implications. And I'm thinking that people probably are working on something like that. The human algorithm. What is that?
Mm-hmm.
It's like
That's a good point. Probably. Steve, I want to ask you, Steve, because I'm a layman and you're our resident expert on all things cosmic and quantum. Is the departed soul as an energetic phenomenon, if it exists as such, is it likely to be in the quote the same universe, or are there different universes where disembodied souls might go?
Well, that's a good question. And people have talked about higher worlds or higher planes of vibration. So there could be multiple realities coexisting, but maybe separated by bands of frequency, ones that we don't detect with our current electromagnetic detectors. So whether the soul's at a higher frequency or some unknown part of the electromagnetic spectrum, I don't know.
But is the electromagnetic spectrum is the current quantum theory that there's one electromagnetic spectrum in the universe, or could there be many spectrums crossing each other, at different angles and different, different
vectors
just of the plane?
Yeah, good question. I mean, current quantum theory says there's only one electromagnetic spectrum, but there may be other dimensions which are mathematically possible, but just haven't been physically or experientially uncovered yet.
Do those other dimensions include the same electromagnetic spectrum?
No, probably not, because in many cases in quantum theory, these are mathematical abstractions. They're not thought to have any real correlate to the physical world. But, in the realm of mathematics, then perhaps these other dimensions exist, and maybe the soul is mathematical. Maybe the soul is, an aspect of, the mathematical realm, right? The realm of ideas, the divine mind.
That's interesting.